I want to bring you all on a journey with me. The journey will be down the bayou to the southern Louisiana coast and back in time. We're going to go back to 2018. The Louisiana University's Marine Consortium invited 37 scientists and science communicators to come down to their field station for an event where the theme was a mystery. So on the first night when we all gathered at the field station, the consortium director got up in front of the group. We were all in their lecture room, and he said, "This is what we're going to focus on for the week. Coastal optimism." The room immediately filled with a resounding chorus of oohs and ahs, and then complete silence and quizzical looks on our faces. What is coastal optimism? The consortium director continued that the Louisiana coast, when you hear the stories in the news, they're all doom and gloom, right? And certainly, yes, the Louisiana coast is impacted by sea level rise and saltwater intrusion and loss of vegetation and coastal erosion. And then you get features such as what you see here. There are ghost forests that are occurring because trees that require fresh water are now subjected to saltwater intrusion and can no longer survive. And did you know that there are entire sections of the Louisiana coast, sections the size of a football field, that are being lost to climate change every hour? So during this week down at the Louisiana University's Marine Consortium, we were challenged not to find these stories of doom and gloom, not to share them with others, but instead look for stories of adaptation, of resilience, to go out into the community, meet the local people, talk to the scientists, get out in the field and find examples of where things are positive, where things are happening, looking for coastal optimism. So one of the groups that we met with when we were down there is the Pointe-au-Chien Indian tribe. The Pointe-au-Chien tribe is a coastal tribe with approximately 800 tribal members. They focus as a fishing community, but they are subjected to so many challenges. Loss of educational opportunities. They also are not recognized by the federal government. In fact, of the 15 tribes in southern Louisiana, only 4 have met the criteria for recognition by the federal government. So in 1992, when Hurricane Andrew hit the Louisiana coast, the Pointe-au-Chien actually petitioned the Bureau of Indian Affairs to gain federal recognition. And unfortunately, despite their location at the southernmost edge of the Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes, they still to this day have not received that recognition. But during our field trip, we all piled into a bus and we arrived at the community center of the Pointe-au-Chien. And we had to go up the stairs to enter because all the buildings in this location, whether they be official buildings or homes, are built on stilts because you have constant flooding events that occur and stormwater surges. So we get up to the front door and we were greeted with nothing but warmth and kindness. We enter the building and there are rows of tables laid out for us. They had just caught some fresh shrimp and fresh crabs. We were treated to a dinner of homemade jambalaya, gumbo. By the end of the evening, we were filled with great food and stories, some amazing conversations we had with these tribal members. And again, each of us were asked to tell their stories, get these stories out to new audiences that hadn't heard about them before. So I was thinking, okay, what can I do to find a new method of storytelling, to actually share one example of a narrative that I received from the Pointe-au-Chien? And so what I decided to do was, well, where am I creative? I can quilt as a scientist, so why not create a science-themed quilt? And although this is a fishing community, I wanted to tell about how they use the land and their story of farming for coastal optimism. So what I want you to do is to look at this quilt and look at the fabrics. This quilt's about the size of a table runner, and each fabric tells part of the story. So starting with that green, leafy-looking fabric, this is to address how they farm the land. The next blue fabric is showing sea level rise and how this saltwater intrusion is coming in. In fact, that white fabric, if we could zoom in, you would see tiny little dots to represent the salt concentration that is now infusing into this area. The next fabric is a brown fabric with lots of cracks on it. And those cracks represent how the land is not the same land. They can't grow the same crops. In fact, their fruit and pecan trees can't grow at all anymore. But the next fabric, packets of seeds, seeds for growth, seeds for them growing their community, remaining in this particular location. And they use their tools. The next fabric has a set of gardening tools. So they are gardening the land, and they have come up with a really creative solution. Since they can't stay necessarily and have all their gardens on the land, they have built elevated greenhouses. So they have found a way to then elevate those greenhouses to grow their vegetables, as shown in the next fabric, and also to grow, you see this red fabric to represent health, medicinal plants that are true to their culture, to their ancestry. And they are also planting a medicinal garden outside as well. The last fabric is this woven fabric, woven pattern to show that they are weaving together their own culture and their community. They want their children to know how to use the land, how to then pay tribute to their customs and traditions, and to continue to grow in this location. The back of the fabric, I also put a pattern because we heard another story that was just so wonderful to hear. So as the tribe was sharing their story with us, one of the tribal members told us on how, as a community, their first language is Indian French. And for some members, it's their only language. And although English is typically their second language, he paused a minute and joked and said, well, actually, their second language is talking with their hands. Because when they're out on the shrimp boats and they have to communicate across the water, they have a whole series of hand signals that they use to communicate with each other. So I just wanted to include that story also as part of this fabric, because I thought that was kind of fun. But let's fast forward. August 29th, 2021. With rotational wind speeds of 160 miles per hour, Category 4 Hurricane Ida makes landfall right in this location. Fewer than 15 homes of the Pointe-aux-Chenes were livable after this storm passed. And to complicate things, again, as I mentioned before, this tribe is not recognized by the federal government. So disaster aid, such as for housing, for unemployment, for crisis counseling, it's very slow to reach this community, or it doesn't reach them at all. Their community center did survive those high wind speeds, and immediately the Pointe-aux-Chenes changed it into a free store. It's a location where there are so many donations coming in from outside the region that are providing a critical lifeline for them to be able to continue to survive in this location. And so the first question you're probably asking yourselves is, well, why stay? Why remain in this location? And I want to share with you a few quotes that I pulled from tribal member Teresa Dardar. She's been interviewed a lot in the media, and I think her quotes will help us understand some context and the mindset. So here's the first quote. Well, we're all family. And you know, you don't break up a family. Where would you have us go? Is there one state that don't have natural disasters? And would everybody fit in that one state? As an earth scientist, I can tell you the answer is no. It doesn't exist. Here's another quote from Teresa Dardar. I know it's dangerous to live on the bayou because it can happen again. But when you love your community, and if you move, it hurts to pull your roots out. If you do move, you scatter the people. Teresa's acknowledging that there are environmental challenges that will continue. The next storm will occur, but they will continue to rebuild, work tirelessly to be able to protect and preserve this land, their ancestral lands. So this is a view looking out the back of their community center, give you an idea of how low they are to the water levels there. And what's amazing about this group is that they have been able to adapt. They have been able to be resilient, and they have faced so many challenges, so many more challenges than any individual or community should have to face. You can hear Teresa's frustration in this final quote I'll share from her. It's tough. It's like we're at the end of the world, and we're treated that way too. We're always last for everything. So the logical solution, of course, is to pack up and move, right? To leave. Why stay in a location if you know you're going to get hit again? Or maybe that's not the solution. The Pointe-au-Chien are resilient. They're adaptable. They have lived on these lands for over hundreds of years. And what they're doing is working to be able to make this community work for them. Despite the oil and gas companies coming through and dredging through their lands and laying the pipelines that go out into the Gulf of Mexico, even trying to lay those pipes through their cemetery. Despite the storms that are coming with frequency, despite not getting recognized by the federal government. In fact, one of their tribal members went on and became a lawyer, and she is raising and elevating their voices in Washington, D.C. to get that recognition. One of the younger tribal members during his lifetime shared with us that an entire barrier island was lost. He is seeing the land lost during his life. He went on to college to become an environmental science major so that he could then come back and help construct levees, build these barriers back up so that these people can remain on their ancestral lands. So when we talk about coastal optimism and when storms come that relocation is the answer, I would like to propose to you, maybe it's not. Maybe relocation cannot be and should not always be the answer. Let's look to people and communities before we look at dollar signs and laws in thinking about the solutions for climate change. Thank you.